Crazy Stupid Podcast. Before we begin, if this is your first time listening to us or watching us, go ahead and subscribe, okay? Follow us. Leave a little review if you're on the podcast app, you know. We have dope content and you should stick around and hear the rest of it. So, we just finished rewatching. I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, this gotta be like my 5th time watching.
Yeah, but we just rewatched X-Men First Class for the first time in a while for me. I feel like it's been at least a couple years. That's like the one X-Men movie that I do like periodically return to. That and Days of Future Past. I gotta say the other X-Men movies, it's been several years since I watched
You never
them.
rewatch any of the original ones?
No.
X2 was actually really good.
I've always been a little bit conflicted about like the Professor X Magneto thing, which you're supposed to be. That's like the whole point.
I think we're going to agree on this.
I do think that First Class did a much better job portraying the nuances in Magneto than the originals, if I remember accurately.
Yes.
I think in the originals, Magneto was a bit more of like a straightforward villain. I think that he still had some nuance, but it was like a bit less both sidesy, you know? So they did a much better job, and oh no.
Andy.
They did a much better job. And there were several points in the movie where I was like, I just don't know Xavier. Number one, Xavier, the second that you revealed yourself as a mutant in that little office room, the CIA said, let's lock them up. That was the first thing that they said.
Yeah.
And then what did you do? You said, let me give them a list of the names, locations, and abilities of all the mutants I could possibly find. I'm sorry, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. Not smart at all.
And Eric called him out on it.
And he called him out, and Eric should have called him out a little bit harder. I mean, I appreciate that Eric kind of did what he could. He was like, I'm going to try to hear him out, but also like, let us be the ones to do it. Like, we don't want you guys in the room, which is a good safety measure, but probably not enough because it's still the CIA. But as I was watching the movie, I realized Professor X, I feel like there's 2 things that sort of really shape him and his character and make his decisions make sense. The first one is like, obviously, if you have telepathy, you're going to have an immense amount of empathy for people because you can literally understand every single person's perspective on the planet. And that's good, but there is such a thing as like having too much empathy, and you're like I do this sometimes, where like, I can't listen to a story without being like, but what about from this perspective? And sometimes it's just like, no, sometimes you don't need to do that. So I feel like he falls into that a little bit, and that like, because he can understand where everybody is coming from all the time, I think that he doesn't always take the strongest stances. He's a little bit of like a middle person.
He's a moderate?
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's the word.
We can call it.
I don't know why that word didn't come to mind.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I realized watching this movie is that he's also coming from a place of immense privilege.
There we go. That's what I was going to get to.
Yes. And I don't think that ever clicked for me that like he's coming from a place, and it's privilege on multiple levels of like, they make it clear in the movie financially, like his class status growing up is like a huge benefit. But also in the movie, they also do a good job of describing the levels of privileges within mutation. And his mutation is one that like, you're just not living the same life that like Mystique is living.
Thank you.
Like, you're just not like, your mutation doesn't really hinder you in any tangible way.
No, it's not visible.
It's not visible, and all it can really do is help you. You can turn it off. Like, it's not like you are burdened with always having to read people's minds. So like, you can't even say that.
He did that in Days of Future Past. He turned it off.
Right. But and like, yeah, literally all it does is help you in life. It doesn't hinder you at all. And so those 2 things combined, it makes sense why he's able to maneuver from this place of like working together and optimism and this belief in humanity, because he's operating from a stance of privilege. And you see white people in real life do that all the time, where they're like, let's just come together. Let's just, like, I don't know, like, we don't need to be so angry. Like, let's just, and sometimes it's like, no,
but
full stop.
What I would add to that is it's also some marginalized groups that have some privilege as well. Because for upper class Black, Latinx, Asian people, they can sometimes fall into that as well.
That's very true.
You know, because they're in that class, that tax bracket where they're just not having the same experiences that people middle class and lower are having. And that intersectionality of class and race or class and ethnicity or you know, class, nationality.
And any sort of marginalized identity.
Yeah. You know, and I think that was kind of my problem with Xavier. But I'll get into that. I don't want to like sidetrack you if you have more thoughts there.
Well, I guess I kind of do. But I guess that made me think of juxtaposing that obviously against Magneto. And also then juxtaposing that against Shaw, the villain in the movie. And like, because I was really trying to think in the movie, like, okay, what's the difference between Shaw and Magneto? Because obviously at the end, they kind of come to the same conclusion. And I feel like the movie could have brought this home a little bit harder. Because at the end, they make it seem like Magneto's like, I fully agree with you. It's just that you were a Nazi and you killed my mom. So like, I can't really go with you. But I think it's a bit more than that. If you really break it down, I feel like it's pretty clear that Shaw was operating from a place of power. Like he was power hungry. And I think Magneto is operating from a stance of self-preservation because he's been through trauma.
That's a word.
And so, so I think that where they land is the same in that like we have to be on the offensive and we can't try to work with humanity. We have to be on the offensive and try to take them out. But it's not coming from the same place. Like they make it pretty clear how Magneto's experience in the Holocaust has shaped his entire outlook on life. And they do a really good job of it. I feel like maybe not the best. I think they could have still done better, but like they do a much better job in these films than I think in the originals of him like bringing it up often, like in conversations when he's like, this is how it starts. It starts with a list and identification. Or when he's like, I've been at the mercy of people who were just taking orders before, like I'm not gonna do it again. So they're kind of reminding you of like how he's being shaped by his experiences. And to me, that's the clear difference between the two, is that he's not doing this out of just vengeful anger. There's definitely some, but I don't think that's all of it. I think at the core, he's afraid because he's been through something so traumatic and horrific and he has no faith in the goodness of humanity. And so he's operating out of self-preservation. And I think the comics do a good job bringing this home too.
Yeah.
Because in the comics, he has in creates a utopia. He's like, I'm not even going to deal with y'all no more. We're going to be over here. You guys just can't sit with us.
Deuces.
Which I think really shows it's like, he's not just about revenge and murder and taking over the world. That's not really what he's about. He's really about, he wants to protect his own, whatever means necessary. Of course, because he'll be Malcolm X. But okay.
You brought up a lot that I was thinking about, but I think I saw it from a slightly different perspective. In my opinion, I think I'm thinking about what the MCU can do with this story once they go in that direction. I think if the MCU is looking to have a impactful X-Men story, they can't position Charles Xavier as like politically and socially moderate. I just doesn't make sense. And it's not effective because there are moments in the movies, like in Days of Future Past and in the comics, where Magneto is flat out right. Like humans are going to try to fight what they deem as a threat to their extinction. Like that's what they're going to do. They're going to fight against their own extinction. And two, historically, it's just not how it's ever gone. It's just, that's not how it really works.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you pose Charles Xavier as a moderate, you kind of have to make him a little naive to what the stakes are in certain moments, because even Xavier calls him out. He's like, are you that blinded that you genuinely don't
Eric?
think? Yeah. Magneto calls out Xavier and essentially is like, are you that blinded that you don't think that they would try to, fight against their own extinction? Like, think.
But I think that's where the privilege comes in. I do think it makes sense that he would think like that, given his background.
Yeah. I think this movie did a better job, but I would have liked to see it a little bit more, where a more impactful story is that you have two progressive people with two different methods of how to bring liberation to their people, as opposed to Eric is all the way on the radical left side, and Xavier is kind of in the middle, and the message is Eric went too far. And that's what we're supposed to take away from that movie. If we land closer to the left moderate like Xavier, then we'll be good. But that's just not how it goes. Even with MLK, as his story goes on, he becomes more and more progressive because he understands the necessity for how certain policies have to be restructured for there to be like genuine change in the country.
And even, I was just going to talk about MLK because obviously that's who, Professor X is supposed to.
Yeah.
Side note, this always made me mad in my mind. Why does Professor X represent MLK and Magneto represents? That bothers me. I just feel like Professor X should be Malcolm X, or you need to name him something else. But anyways, sorry. But even with like MLK, if they're trying to draw that analogy as like, I believe did the creators ever say that, or did we just come to that? I assume that they said it at some point.
I'm not sure.
It's just so clearly
there.
But if that's what they were trying to do, this is a very whitewashed interpretation of MLK. Because even when he was like on his, non-violence, that wasn't because like, we just love the white people and we want to protect them from the black people's hate. That's not what that was. That was strategic. That was him being like, this is how we get people's attention in the right way to meet our means. Like, we know that if we do it like this, we know that the media will pay attention and they'll tell the story in the right way that will get enough people to be like, something is off here. It was very strategic, right? He went purposefully into places where he knew that they would be met with the most violent backlash, because he knew we need the news on this. And if the news sees us in this light, and if they tell the story in this way, we'll be able to change the right people's minds, right? It was strategic. It wasn't just like, we don't want to hurt people. It wasn't, I'm sure there was some of that because obviously his Christian faith like played a lot, but it was a plan.
Yeah.
There was and I feel like this interpretation of Professor X doesn't necessarily do that justice, because in the movies, I think they kind of try to say it where he's trying to say like, if we act like monsters, then they'll think we're monsters, and then that won't work for us, right? Like, I think they kind of go there, but I do think they still make it a bit like when he's like, these are just innocent men in the ships and which, like, I guess maybe you could say that, but also I don't know.
It's not landing as well as you think it is. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, that's
especially
true.
When Magneto comes back with, so were the Nazis. Like, oh yeah, like, does it matter? Yeah.
I mean, we sort of touched on, because I think we probably picked up on a lot of things here. So there's a few things that I won't even go into that because they'll feel redundant. But one thing that I did think about is, whenever the MCU decides to move forward with the X-Men, I actually don't know if they should place Xavier and Magneto as the focal point of the movie, because I think we've seen that for like 12 movies now, and obviously you've got in the animated series, in the comics, and if you add up all of them, like the Wolverines, because they all that. So as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, here are two protagonists who I think that they should center it around. The first should be Kamala Khan.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, because she's,
Right, and the second would say would be Storm.
Yeah.
Those are the two that I think...
I actually want to go ahead.
Yeah, but based on the social identities that they individually hold, I think you could land the message a lot stronger based off of who the message would be coming from with these two women of color.
Yeah.
And I think if you went with Kamala, you could even have like a movie where it might even have like a bit of like a Stranger Things vibes because it's coming from a younger perspective. So like that could be kind of cool. Or if it's Storm, obviously there's like a rich history you could pull in from Black history in general and create similarities or juxtapositions between those two.
But I guess you could
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I was going to say that kind of ties in because it's talking about like centering it around people of color. I was thinking about this movie in our last video and how the X-Men is honestly another example of the exact same thing.
Yes.
Of like, you're trying to tell the story.
Again.
We know who you're talking about.
Again. Instead of making Mystique blue, or excuse me, instead of making her like black or brown, you made her blue.
No, and this is the thing. No, and she can still be blue. She obviously in the comics she's blue, but Mystique, when they do this again, she needs to be played by a Black woman in particular, and this is why. Okay, as I was watching this film, I was like, oh no, having her played by a white woman, it doesn't hit. You guys, it needs to be a Black woman. And race swiping is not always necessary, but this time it is. Her whole story arc, at least in the films, I don't know much about her in the comics, is literally about how her mutation is one that is visible, that she, in order to hide, has to assimilate into society's beauty standards. Don't play with me. She needs to be a Black woman. Because what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's true.
Because what are we talking about?
You're right. I agree with that. That's a good point. Okay, not to go off a bit of a tangent, but here I do have a few qualms about the movie.
Yes.
Because it is a great movie. It is a little bit flawed. Number one, if we stay on Mystique, why do they keep making Mystique naked? I don't understand it.
In the comics, isn't she?
No, she has on clothes.
It's about sexy.
I'm not
being
crazy.
Sexy.
Yes, I know I wasn't crazy. She has on clothes. I don't know why they did that. And so like she's like, yeah, mutant and proud and like, yeah, that's cool, but like we would still know if you like we would still know that you were blue even if you just put on a tank top. You know what I mean? That's cool. And you making it seem like Charles Xavier was being weird when you pulled up on him butt naked and he's like, bro, what?
Number one, you're my sister.
You know what I mean? What are we doing here? I don't know if it was the director's choice. Was it Bryan Singer? Because he's a bit of a weirdo. Who directed First Class? It might have been him because sometimes he'd be on that weird shit. It might have been him who did.
Click on movies.
Was it him who did First Class? He did Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse.
He didn't do it.
Who did X-Men First Class? But he set the. But he did
precedent.
Yeah.
He did the original.
Oh, it wasn't him. He stepped away because also he had some SA allegations against him. So if it was Bryan Singer who made that decision, one, that's super awkward. If you know the history about what he's done, I'm not going to go into that. But it's like, bro, that's super. It's weird. I don't understand it.
She can in fact wear clothes.
Yeah. The second thing, let me pull up my notes again, because this gonna bug me anytime I watch this movie. Why I did that black man like that, Darwin? What? Why would you call him Darwin and then have his story arc end like that? Why I did that black man like that? I feel like
I just have to laugh.
It's not. I don't know if they were trying to go for like an ironic way that he goes out, but it was like, it's dumb. You can't. If you're making it seem like he can adapt to anything, what is the limitation there? Like, that was, I guess, a problem that I had with him in general. What's the power scale for his character? Because if he can adapt to anything, what Shaw does to him shouldn't have ended him. His body would have found a way to adapt to it. Like, I just like, the science isn't sciencing right now in my mind. Like,
I felt like when I was watching it, they were trying to show us like, see, his body is adapting, and that's what kills him, because his like body changes. So, like, but like, I don't really know if
I don't
works.
know. That just felt kind of goofy.
It's an excuse to kill off the black guy.
The one black character.
We also need to talk about how, this whole story is supposed to be an allegory for racism and oppression. You based it in the 60s. You did it. You based it in the 1960s, and you didn't talk about segregation not one time in that movie.
See, this is, oh my gosh, this is where if we talk about don't go the moderate approach, if you're going to make an X-Men movie, MCU, I'm talking to you right now, you have to not just bring up the mutant identity politics, you have to also bring up the other identities that they'd be carrying and how those things might intersect with each other as well. Like an experience of a mutant that is also experiencing other things like Kamala. It wasn't, at some point we're going to see how her mutation might lead to forms of like prejudice, but her whole TV show, though, was pointing to other forms that she was experiencing, that her community was experiencing on a daily basis. You put those two together, I think that you could come up with endless ways to explore that. That would be so refreshing. The second thing that I would say is with like Magneto. I know people have talked about race swapping him. I actually don't. I don't want them to do that. I sort of talked about this before. Yeah, have a white Jewish man, because there is a lot of conversations you can have about how white supremacy does not tolerate Jewish people and is very anti-Semitic to Jewish people. Explore the intersectionality there. That could be very interesting to see. Just like, think about that in my mind. But
I would agree.
Yeah.
There was a couple casting errors, I would say.
Jennifer Lawrence did not seem interested at all.
Man, I never saw it before. I was never like a big Jennifer Lawrence girl. When that movie came out, though, she was like the it girl. Like Jennifer Lawrence was like in all the films, and everybody loved her.
After Hunger Games,
oh my gosh,
right?
she's so quirky. She's so herself. She trips on the red carpet. We love her. That was like a big thing.
Where's the pizza? She had that video.
Yeah. But she was not the right one for this. Like I said, it needed to be a black woman. But even race aside, she just didn't bring it. Same thing with the girl playing Emma Frost. She just didn't bring it.
Where is she from? I think she was in Mad Men.
She just did. I needed the intensity. Okay. I also felt like they were trying to go for like Emma Frost, sex appeal, blah blah blah. I'm down for that. Okay. I love it. It could work, but it
gotta have some charisma though.
She didn't do it.
Gotta have some charisma.
She did not do it.
I did like Magneto though. They kind of gave Magneto like a James Bond kind of a feel. When he pulls up that first time, Michael Fassbender has got that swag, yo. This is why I love him. I think one of the best scenes in the X-Men movies is when he's in the bar.
Yeah.
It's James Bond energy to the max. And I'm like, yo, he's smooth. He's drinking. He's giving them the looks like, yeah, y'all know what I'm about to do. There ain't nothing you can do about it. And then they try to pull up their weapons, and he's like, come on, son. He takes them all out, finishes his drink, flicks his hair back. Are you kidding me? Yo, this dude is smooth. This is why I'm like, I'm gonna be sad if they recast some of the certain Fox X-Men characters, because people like Michael Fassbender, I think, bring so much to the screen. Even in those, the movies that weren't that great, every scene he was in, phenomenal.
It's like Jesse Eisenberg in the DC. Those movies. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, I thought in every film and every scene, I was like, you're good. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I think those two I'd be fine with them bringing back. Honestly, everybody else you can recast. Obviously, besides Logan, duh. But like,
I think he should stay.
For a while, they remember when he was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. The actor
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman. He was like, I'm not coming back, and people were like coming up with ideas to like recast him, and I was like, none of these hit the same. And you just can't have him in it. I'm sorry.
or wait a long time.
Yeah, it's just not
wait
gonna
a long
work.
time. Because the last Batman movie was in 2012, and then we didn't get another one until 2022. That's 10 years. Because for a while people had got attached to Christian Bale. You know?
I mean, to this day, Ben Affleck, I thought he was fine. And
wait, no, that's a lie. I forgot about Ben Affleck.
Oh, you're thinking of Robert Pattinson. Oh yeah, it wasn't 10 years. It wasn't 10 years.
Snyder Bros gonna cook me for this one. So
don't edit it out. Let them come.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna edit it out.
No, Ben Affleck I thought was fine.
What's his name? Who played Cyborg? James something? I forget his name. He was in Westworld. I think I'd like to see him back.
Oh, James Marsden.
Yeah.
I just want to see James Marsden. I just love him.
He's a good actor. He does
all things, but they're gonna have to align on like. I mean, here's the thing. I guess with the multiverse, they can do what they want.
Sure.
But like, all these characters and actors are like playing the characters at various points in time. It's like, you know.
You'd have to really, really sell it with like, yeah, it's all the multiverse, because it's gonna be like, it feels kind of cheap if you just pick,
I feel like you have two options.
Pick and choose who you want.
You either retcon all of it and you're like, none of that shit happened. You're like, we're just gonna pick who we want.
I'm okay with that.
And these are the people who exist at the same time. That's option one.
You could do that.
Option two is to go the multiverse route, but I think you just have to be careful with this multiverse thing because I think it has the ability to be very cool. It can be a very cool thing, but if you use it too much and you go too heavy-handed with the, oh yeah, they're here because the multiverse, and they're also here because the multiverse, and we know that they died, but they're also here because of it's just too much, and then it becomes cheap. Yep. I feel like you have to use it.
Stakes are low, consequences don't matter.
Exactly. Like you have to use it very sparingly, and so honestly, I might prefer if they're just like, listen, I know you guys know all this other stuff, but no, that's not a part of this. That's something else, and it doesn't count.
Yeah.
You've done it before. You did it with Hulk, I think, sort of.
They kind of retcon. It looks like they're going to retcon some stuff with Daredevil as well, because they're recasting a few people and brought back some characters that they like.
Yeah.
Last thing that I'll say, and I've been thinking about this after Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think superhero movie fatigue exists. I think that...
What do you think about it? We've gotten it pretty steadily for like 20... There's been there's always a superhero movie.
Yeah, I think what we are experiencing now, and I think people would say this started back with the MCU. No, I'm going to say it goes back to Christopher Nolan's trilogy. Ever since The Dark Knight came out, there has been a standard for what a lot of fans want to expect out of their superhero movies. And if you're not meeting that standard, people are going to let you know by low reviews, or you're not going to make a lot of money. It just so happened that Marvel found themselves in a bit of a rough spot with Phase 4, where things were always up and down, where one thing was great, something was kind of bad. That's not fatigue. Some of their films and TV shows they would put out just weren't good. Some of the product they were putting out was just subpar. If you put out a great movie that is done with a protagonist that's a superhero, people are going to go watch it and enjoy it, because Guardians of the Galaxy 3, that junk's making a whole bunch of money. So you can't tell me that it's fatigue. Nah, I think people are like, don't just throw something cheap together and think that you're just going to make a quick billion and we're going to be okay with it. That, I think, is the difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
The only other thing I also had was for the MCU, also just some advice. One thing that we can just, I think, do a little bit better with the X-Men. I need the fight scenes to just be better.
Those fights, that final battle was kind of cringe, I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, and I think it's because I think it is hard when it's like, it's not hand-to-hand combat, you know?
You gotta give them that budget, though.
Yeah, and so I understand, but listen, Harry Potter did it. Harry Potter combat scenes were awesome, and they never touched each other.
But the fight scenes in Days of Future Past were good. They had a bigger budget.
Yeah, that's true. Those were really good.
I think they were like, this is a bit of a fingers crossed movie, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
We need a little bit more oomph.
All right, so I do want to touch on just a couple of other things. Succession, Attack on Titan, because you've been binging that. So I do want to get like some of your initial thoughts on that. But I still am trying to like process everything that happened with Succession. I was very tempted to wake you up after I finished that episode because I couldn't sleep.
That would not have gone well.
No, I know. I knew that, because I'm like, if I do that, she's going to be mad at me. That's not going to end well. But I had to just kind of sit with that. As I'm watching this, you remember back in 2016 when we were at our apartment and the dread that we had during election night?
Yeah, it was your apartment.
Yeah. Oh, my apartment. Yeah. And like, I literally got a headache and I had to go to bed because I got so overwhelmed. I know you were kind of mad about that because I left you by yourself.
Yeah. You literally went to sleep.
Because I couldn't handle that kind of stress. Like that was too much for me. That's how I felt. And I knew I wasn't alone in that because in the video that I posted today, so many people in the comment section were saying the same exact thing. That it's like, yo, watching this episode really showed how for a lot of us, we have not really healed from what happened in 2016.
Or 2020.
Yeah, for both. Yeah. But the fact that Trump lost, I think, was a little bit different. But in 2016 specifically, there was a kind of dread that you felt sort of happening over the country. Racism was always there, but they felt bolden after that one, though. Like it was, they had some confidence, they had some swag. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't like hiding on Twitter fingers. It was like we're gonna put on the white hoods and start marching, kind of stuff, like we saw in Charlottesville. It was hard to watch. I'm gonna be real with you because that episode really gave us a glimpse of two things. It reminded us the dread that we all felt and the severity of what happens when you've got news networks that don't take the democratic process seriously. And it also showed the stress that it was, the stress that people in these buildings that were working for these networks were also feeling, and the powerless that a lot of employees had in that process, because the person upstairs is saying, we need to fill these lies because that's what the viewers want to hear, and how powerless you kind of are in that moment because you're like, what am I going to do? Granted, you can say that you made your bed, you got to lie in it. You're going to work for ATN or AKA Fox News. You do that. The problem is for a lot of people when they go and work in Fox News, it's hard for them to find work at other news networks. That's what I've heard from a lot of people because you got that stain on your resume and it's just like, bad for them, no, I don't. But to a degree, I can understand the position that they're in of like, what am I supposed to do? I have to just follow orders. I don't like it, but I can see what leads them to making that decision. And that's what was hitting home. Man, I'm probably never going to watch that one again, but that's what was kind of hitting home for that episode because I know that people will say that episode shouldn't have surprised us because they were always bad people. But I'm sorry. I think we're being a little dishonest because there were always these moments of slight redeeming qualities that the children had throughout the entire series so far, where I could understand that these were not good people, but seeing the glimpse in their family dynamics, I could sort of understand who they are as people. But this episode was like the director was saying, or excuse me, the showrunner was saying, these are not good people. And all of those other things that bring you empathy, that stuff doesn't matter when they have all this power. And that really hit home because I'm like, Roman, he's not being any different. He's still making the jokes. He's still being quirky. He's saying the slightly inappropriate things that you kind of find funny in like a Michael Scott kind of a way. But he's doing all of that while pushing a racist fascist as president. It's like when you put those two things together, it was just so unsettling that entire hour. I was just like, "Hui."
Listen, that's an important message because people have this idea about racists and fascists and all sorts and all those types of people that like they're not likable,
right?
And it's like, I mean, like they're not, I guess, but like, but
no,
also
I know what
like
you mean.
They can be charismatic, they can be funny, they can appear kind in their day-to-day interactions with people. It doesn't always. It's not. You're not getting Adolf Hitler every time or whatever. You know, like Like it can be a person that you're like, but they seem cool, like they seem chill, they seem like a fun person. They can still have trash takes.
Yeah. And what I'll say with that, if you're watching Succession and you're trying to both sides the narrative, boy, you are doing some real mental gymnastics here, my friend. Because if you don't see the clear, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not like explanation, but like the messaging behind it. The word's not hitting me. It's getting late. My brain's trying to shut down. But if you aren't essentially watching this and getting a clear idea of who they are specifically trying to critique, you're letting your partisanship get in the way. I'm sorry, because you cannot watch that episode with what ATN did and not make clear comparisons with what Fox News had been doing for the last 4 years and how they handled things on the election night, and how Tucker Carlson and some of these other people like Laura Ingraham were peddling this fuel of election doubt all throughout this entire week, where we had to dread all of it. And when Trump gave that speech, we were up, what was it, like 2 a.m. or something crazy? And the dread that I felt when I was like, yo, he's really about to do this. You cannot watch that show. I understand that there are other dynamics at play here, and it's a critique on the political system as a whole, the critique on capitalism, the critique on billionaires and sort of the oligarch feel that they have over our country and the influence that they have. But when it comes to this specifically, there is no nuance there. There is no both sides. That's a clear critique that they're having about a very specific portion of the political sector. You need to own that shit. I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest because I had a couple of people in the comment section say that. I'm like, this is your way of still feeling comfortable in trying to vote for a Republican.
What they were being like, but Democrats do that too.
Well, I guess they're trying to say the critique is nuanced enough where you could apply it to both sides. No, you cannot. Stop. It's not true. You can say the Democrats are trash and they're not what we want them to be without saying that there's some form of equivalent to the destruction that Fox News has done to our country. There isn't.
Yeah.
There isn't. Cut that shit out. It's whack. And it is intellectually dishonest. Mm-hmm. And it kind of feels like a little bit of gaslighting. We're not watching what's happening in our country and coming to the conclusions of, yes, there's problems everywhere, but Fox News specifically has been dramatically problematic to this country.
Yeah.
I remember Jon Stewart did a poll on that where he went on their show and did a debate. I think it was with Bill. Oh, what was his name? He got fired a while back. I can't remember what his name is.
The guy that was like kind of sensible.
Yeah, but he got fired. Yeah. Anyways,
like
I remember Jon Stewart went on one debate show a while back where he brought up facts of like, polls have shown that viewers who consume Fox News are misinformed every single time. Every single time. And you saw that in that episode with ATN when Shiv is like, Tom, are you not going to show this on air? And Tom is like, kind of petty fogging the issue. He just don't want to show it because that's not what the viewers would want. And he's a slave to wanting to give to the viewers only what they want to hear. I understand that a lot of other news networks do that. I know MSNBC can sometimes do that. There's a difference, and you are gaslighting the hell out of people if you try to make it seem like those two things are the same, because they're not. That's all I'm saying. I had to get that rant off my chest because that was really irking me. As you can see, I'm still troubled by that episode because it was a lot. It brought up a lot of emotions, and I felt very comforted because a lot of people, hundreds of people in the comment section were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we haven't really healed from it because the political process is so quick. You got to move on to the next one.
But also, we're still dealing with the repercussions of it. It's
right.
like, how can you heal? It's like kind of still going on.
Right. Anyways, so you started Attack on Titan.
Yes, I watched an entire season in a day. So.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was very happy. What do you think?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's quite good. I did have to get over the hump of those first few episodes.
Sure. It is a slow burn. I'll be careful with my words. It is not like Breaking Bad in terms of content, but the narrative choices of a slow burn and the stakes rise each season is very much, it reminded me of Breaking Bad.
I don't even think it's that slow of a burn, because honestly, after like the first 5 or 6 episodes, it's kind of like we're grooving, we're going. Maybe 10. I just think some of the storytelling tactics and styles in anime irk me. I'm sorry. I'm not a...
So you haven't gotten over it even with you binging this show? Like, there's still moments you're just like, I could do without...
Yeah, there are still times. It isn't the first time I encountered it was when we found out that he could turn into a Titan, and I was like,
spoilers, but
oh yeah, but also nobody better come in these comments and start spoiling this show.
I would just tell you not to look in the comments.
Okay. But when we find out that Eren can become a Titan, and I was like, oh right, let's go, like now the show is really gonna get going, this is it. And then we spent 3 episodes in that doggone courtyard. I was like, there is no way. There is no way we are still here. Every episode you come back, they're still standing in the exact same spot. What should we do? If you can convince them that...
You gotta see what everyone's thinking and feeling and how they're processing it.
No, that was so annoying. But once we got over that,
you were good.
Yeah, now it happens still sometimes, but I don't feel like they've done it to the extent that they did it that one time.
I think directors have changed each season though,
and I think I'm a bit more invested now too, so that even when they do it, I'm like, okay, like I don't love it, but I'll go through with it and I'll try to learn what I can in these episodes.
Who are some of your favorite characters? Like your top 3?
I mean, I really like Mikasa. At first I was like, girl, are you good? I'm sorry. Maybe it's the translation.
This isn't a spoiler. That gets explained. Their dynamics even more.
Okay, because they've started to explain it even now of like what happened and why
it'll get more in depth though.
Okay, because at the beginning I was like, maybe it's just like a really weird translation, but she just kept coming for his neck. I was like, what do you mean? Every time she was like, I have to go, you'll die if I don't go. It's like, if I don't come with you, you're dead. So like, where are we going? I was like, I just don't know if you need to tell him that all the time. But
so you got Mikasa.
Yeah, sorry. Over time, I've started to like her a lot more. I really like Levi.
My friend, you ain't seen nothing yet.
I really, really like Levi. He gives in all the animes that I've like partially watched. I've never finished a single one. Sorry, but in all the animes that I've watched, there's always a character like that that's like, I'm just too cool. Like, I'm just too cool. I'm too skilled. Like, you really can't get one over on me. Like, that's just... Like, they have... In Naruto, they have his friend with the hair.
We don't need to give examples if we don't know.
Sasuke?
Yeah.
That's like that. And I always liked Sasuke when I watched it. But then even more so, there was the guy with that guy with the headband over his eye. That was also like that, and I also really liked him. I always like those characters. That cool cat energy I just vibe with, and I feel like Mikasa kind of has that too.
Who's your third one?
This is awkward because I actually really like Annie, but then
you can still like her.
She really
you can still like her.
Left turn. But I was like, I like that she's like, just a badass, and she's just like whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like I will start to like Eren more as his character kind of progresses more. He has like that quintessential there's just the main characters in anime shows are often like this, where it's like they're just a little annoying. And it's like I don't know how to describe it. It's just
I know what you mean. I think he's like 15 at the time, so he does give off like you're an emotional teenager,
right? Yeah, a little whiny and a little like I don't know. But I think as it goes on, the show goes on, I think I will start to be a bit more. But I really like Levi. I really like Mikasa. I also like that the blonde, the
Commander Erwin.
Yes.
Oh my!
I really like him.
Listen, you'll get to this later on. Commander Erwin, he has made me feel like I was ready to enlist in some of his speeches. Okay, like I could go to war for that dude.
They be killing me with these speeches. I know I was saying it today.
The fate of humanity.
Every every time they're like, this is the day that humanity must rise up.
He's got to rile them up.
No, I know. But it's just so funny because every time I'm like, you're gonna lose. You guys you lose. You lose every time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I felt like it was a victory when they beat Annie, though.
Yes, but
to an extent.
But then they didn't get the information.
Yeah, because she froze up.
The closest one I could say is when they put the boulder back and when they walled up the that was like, okay, like we did something, but it did cost a lot.
So it is 9:18. I do want to start watching more episodes with you. You want to close out?
Sure. Thank you so much for listening to what?
I don't know. It's just funny when you started off. Like, it's so.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Yeah.
This episode, as per usual, was produced by Adrian Vettel-Marston. He be putting in the work on the little the editing and stuff.
It's not a big deal.
Sponsors. It's starting to feel weird to say because I feel like we're begging. But if you if you guys want to, you can.
Nah, you can't be having these people think we broke.
We're not, but like we are in the way that everybody is broke.
Yeah, that's true. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.